My name's Daniel. I'm the kind of guy who believes in showing up, especially for the people I care about. Loyalty and honesty have always been my values. It's how I was raised, and it's how I've tried to live my life. I just wanted a stable life, a partner I could trust, and a family we could build together. Simple, right? I met Evelyn 2 years ago. Funny story, actually. Our aunties decided to play matchmaker at a family gathering. I wasn't thrilled about it at first. I'd been so focused on my job that dating wasn't exactly a priority. But there I was, awkwardly shaking hands with this woman in a bright yellow dress who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. We got to talking, though, and it was easy. She had this quick wit, this way of throwing playful jabs that made me laugh when I wasn't expecting it. By the end of the night, I figured, why not see where this goes? Over the next few months, we got closer. She was ambitious, working on plans to start her own event planning business. I liked that about her. It's not every day you meet someone with big goals and the drive to chase them. She said she admired how steady I was, how I had my life together. That meant a lot, hearing that. And as time went on, I started picturing a future with her. Not in some overly romantic way, just practical stuff. Building a home, sharing responsibilities, raising kids. That's what I'd always wanted. And Evelyn seemed like the kind of person I could build that with. But here's the thing. Looking back now, there were signs. Little moments that didn't quite add up. Like when I talk about my plans for the future, and she'd change the subject. Or when she'd zone out while I was telling her something I was excited about. She'd laugh it off, saying she was just tired or stressed, and I'd let it slide. Everyone has their off days, right? I remember one time we were talking about kids. I mentioned how I'd always wanted to be a dad, and she just smiled and said, "Let's survive wedding planning first." It felt like a brush off, but I didn't press. No relationship is perfect. I told myself it was normal. Maybe she just needed more time to get comfortable talking about that stuff. Maybe I was overthinking it. I guess that's the thing about hindsight. All those small moments I ignored back then, they make perfect sense now. At the time, though, I just wanted to believe we were solid, that we were building something real. I thought preparing for our wedding would be the happiest time of my life. I spent hours making sure every detail reflected the love I felt for her. Like the flowers. She once mentioned how much she loved white roses, with hints of baby's breath. I remembered that from a random conversation months ago. So, I worked with the florist to create a bouquet that would make her smile. I even went back twice to make sure they had the exact shade of white she liked. The seating chart? That was another project I poured my heart into. I wanted her family to feel like royalty, putting them front and center, with the best views of the ceremony. I even spent a whole evening trying to avoid placing any of her cousins near her, and they didn't get along with. It didn't feel like a chore, it felt like love. And then there were my vows. I stayed up late, night after night, writing and rewriting. I wanted every word to count, to show her exactly how much she meant to me. I pictured her standing there in her wedding dress, tears in her eyes as I read those words aloud. Love is about sacrifice, I wrote. It's about giving the best parts of yourself, even when it's not easy. I believed that with everything in me. But looking back, I realized I was the only one who felt that way. She wasn't cruel or openly dismissive. It was more subtle than that. Like when I showed her the flower arrangements, and she just said, "Yeah, that's fine," without even looking at the pictures. Or when I told her about the seating chart, and she shrugged and said, "Honestly, I don't care where anyone sits. Just make sure it looks nice." But I pushed those thoughts away. I told myself she was stressed, that planning a wedding was overwhelming for her. I made excuses because I wanted to believe we were on the same page, that this wedding was as meaningful to her as it was to me. Looking back, though, all the signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. It was 2 days to the wedding, and I had no idea what was about to hit me. While I was running around, putting the final touches on the wedding plans, choosing centerpieces, triple-checking the guest list, even rehearsing my vows in my head, My fiancée was at her bridal shower. But what I didn't expect was what actually happened. According to one of her friends, someone I considered a mutual friend, someone I trusted, things at that bridal shower took a very different turn. She was laughing, all right, but not in the way you'd want your future wife to laugh when talking about you. In between the champagne toasts and compliments on her dress, she started talking about me. And the more she talked, the worse it got. I mean, she said, loud enough for everyone in the room to hear, it's not like I had other options. He's stable. That's what matters now, right? Stable. That's how she described me. Not loving, not kind, not supportive, just stable. Like I was some sort of safe choice she made because nothing better came along. But it didn't stop there. No, she went further. She told them, and I quote, I wasn't going to wait around for her ex-boyfriend forever. He clearly didn't want to settle down. So I settled instead. I mean, come on. Daniel is sweet but boring. Sweet but boring. That's how she summed up everything I'd done for her. All the late-night calls when she was stressed. The years of love, patience, and loyalty. To her, I was nothing more than a plan B. A backup. One of her friends was as shocked as I was when she heard those words. Let's call her Rachel. Rachel and I weren't best friends or anything, but we'd always been on good terms. Rachel told me later that she debated for hours about whether or not to tell me. She knew it would break me. Who wouldn't it break? But in the end, she decided that I deserved to know the truth. She recorded the whole thing on her phone. She didn't mean to be sneaky or anything, it was instinct. She wanted proof in case the words were ever denied. Rachel asked if we meet? There's something you need to know, she said. Her tone alone told me it wasn't good, but I agreed. She showed up at my place an hour later, visibly anxious. I don't know how to say this, but I think you need to hear something, she said, almost whispering. She hesitated, then hit play on her phone. And there it was, my fiancé's voice. Crystal clear. She's joking, I thought at first. It's a bad joke, but the longer the recording played, the harder it was to lie to myself. Her laughter, her words, every single thing confirmed that what we had wasn't what I thought it was. By the time it ended, I just sat there, staring at nothing. My mind was racing. Was this even real? How did I miss this? How could I have been so blind? Rachel started apologizing. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to ruin anything, but I couldn't let you go through with this without knowing. I didn't blame her. How could I? If anything, I was grateful. She didn't have to tell me. She could have stayed quiet, like everyone else at that bridal shower. But she didn't. You did the right thing, I said, though the words felt heavy coming out. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, replaying the recording over and over. The woman I loved, the woman I thought loved me, didn't see me as a partner. I was just convenient. At first, my instinct was to confront her right away, to demand an explanation, to ask her why she would feel this way about me. I picked up my phone more times than I can count, my thumb hovering over the call button. But every time I stopped myself. What would it solve? She'd probably deny it or find a way to twist things around. I realized that if I confronted her in private, she'd just have time to cover her tracks, spin the story, and save face. The following day was hard on me. There were moments I doubted myself. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe she didn't mean it the way it sounded. But the thought of being called a Plan B hurts a lot. By the time the wedding day came, I had made up my mind. This wasn't just about ending the relationship. It was about exposing the truth. If she was bold enough to say those things behind my back, then she needed to face the consequences in front of everyone. The venue was perfect. We'd picked an open garden setup, surrounded by tall oak trees. The chairs were draped in white with satin bows, lined up perfectly on either side of the aisle. There were soft petals scattered on the ground, leading to an arch of fresh roses. I remember standing there trying to take it all in, but it felt hollow, like looking at a photo of someone else's life. Guests started arriving early, dressed in their absolute best. I could hear them laughing and chatting, catching up with old friends. Every now and then, someone would walk past and pat me on the shoulder. "You're a lucky man," they'd say, or "You've got a good one there." I'd nod and smile, pretending they were right. Then she arrived. I'll admit it, she looked stunning. Her dress was a soft ivory, fitted perfectly to her frame, with a long train trailing behind her. Her hair was styled in soft waves, with just enough of a shimmer to catch the sunlight. She smiled, that confident, radiant smile that had once made me feel like the luckiest man alive. But now, knowing what I knew, it felt like a mask. She greeted guests like a queen holding court, laughing, hugging, making everyone feel seen. I watched her charm them effortlessly, the same way she had charmed me. And for a brief moment, I wondered if I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe I'd misheard the recording. Maybe she really did love me, and I was making a huge mistake. The officiant called us to take our places. As I walked to the front, I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me. Family, friends, even strangers who'd come as plus ones. They all looked at us with admiration, whispering about how perfect we were together. "Such a beautiful couple," someone said. "He's so lucky to have her," another murmured. Lucky? Was I really lucky to be a plan B? Lucky to be someone's backup plan? I took my place at the altar. She joined me a moment later, her smile brighter than ever. She looked at me like I was the answer to all her prayers, and for a second, I almost believed it. Almost. The officiant began, his voice calm and steady, walking us through the usual formalities. I barely heard a word. My mind was racing, my chest tightening with every second. She was completely oblivious to what was coming. Her eyes sparkled, and she squeezed my hand lightly, like she couldn't wait to hear me say, "I do." But in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to say it. I stood there at the altar, my palms slightly clammy as I held onto the microphone. It was the moment everyone had been waiting for, our vows, the words that would bind us together for life. I looked at her, standing there in her wedding dress, radiant as ever. But all I could think about was the recording, those words that had shattered everything I thought we had. The officiant's voice brought me back to the moment. "Do you, Daniel Carter, take Evelyn to be your lawfully wedded wife?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. The pressure was suffocating, but I knew what I had to say. My heart pounded as I began. "Before I answer that question, there's something I need to say." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Evelyn's smile wavered slightly, her eyes darting around nervously. She probably thought I was about to deliver some romantic speech, something straight out of a movie. In a way, she wasn't entirely wrong. "When I first met Evelyn," I said, my voice steady, "I felt like I had found the missing piece of my life. She was everything I ever dreamed of, kind, beautiful, and someone who made me believe in the kind of love you read about in books. I've spent every day since then trying to be the man she deserves." I paused, letting those words sink in. Her smile returned, but it was thin, uncertain. She had no idea what was coming. "Love," I continued, my voice firm, "is about trust. It's about choosing someone every single day, not because they're convenient, but because they're irreplaceable. It's about honesty, even when the truth is hard to say. And today, I have to be honest, not just with Evelyn, but with myself and everyone here." Evelyn's face turned pale. The crowd went silent. "Last week," I said, my voice growing sharper, "a friend of ours shared something with me. It was a recording from Evelyn's bridal shower. In that recording, Evelyn told her friends that I faltered for a moment, the words catching in my throat. That I was her backup plan. That she only chose me because the man she really wanted didn't want her." Gasps echoed through the room. Evelyn's eyes widened, and she took a step forward, her hands raised as if to stop me. "Daniel, wait." I held up a hand, cutting her off. "No, Evelyn. You've had your turn. Now it's mine." I turned back to the crowd, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside me. "She called me stable, safe. She laughed about it, as if loving someone who gives you everything they have is a joke. I heard her say those words, and I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. The murmurs grew louder. Her parents looked mortified. Her friends stared at their feet, and my own family watched me with a mix of shock and sadness. Marriage is built on trust, and today I stand here knowing that trust has been broken. I won't build a life with someone who doesn't value me as their first choice. I turned to Evelyn one last time, my voice soft but firm. I deserve more than to be someone's plan B. I hope one day you realize the value of honesty. I continued, my voice unwavering. But that day will not include me. I slipped the ring off my finger and placed it on the altar. The room was in chaos, people whispering, Evelyn's friends trying to console her as she stammered for words. But I didn't stay to hear what she had to say. I walked down the aisle, past the shocked faces, past the life I thought I wanted, and out the doors into the fresh air. The days after the wedding were strange. Honestly, I didn't know what to expect. Would people be angry? Would they judge me? But to my surprise, the messages started flooding in. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years, family members I thought wouldn't understand. They all reached out. They told me I did the right thing, that it took guts to stand up for myself like that. Some even said I'd inspired them to rethink the relationships in their own lives. That was humbling, to say the least. As for her, she tried everything to get in touch. At first it was calls, so many calls that I lost count. Then the messages started coming in. Long ones, short ones, voice notes, each one more desperate than the last. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. It wasn't like that. Can we please talk? But I'd already made up my mind. When someone shows you who they really are, you don't give them a second chance to hurt you. I blocked her number, her social media, everything. She's out of my life for good. In those quiet moments afterward, I had time to really reflect. I realized something important. Sometimes, the greatest act of love isn't about holding on, it's about letting go. Walking away isn't easy. It's painful, messy, and it makes you question everything. But it's also freeing. That's when I understood that loving yourself enough to walk away isn't selfish. It's necessary. Now I'm rebuilding. I won't lie to you. It's not a magical overnight transformation. Healing takes time. But I'm taking things one step at a time. Do I still believe in love? Yeah, I do. But I've learned that real love isn't about settling. It's not about being someone's second choice or their safety net. Real love is mutual. It's respect, honesty, and partnership. And one day, I'll find someone who sees me as their first choice, just like I'll see them as mine. So, if you're watching this and you're in a situation where you feel like you're not enough, remember this. You deserve better. You deserve someone who loves you for who you are, not for what you can provide or how convenient you are. And if you ever find yourself in a position where you have to choose between someone else and yourself, choose yourself. Every single time. So, now that you've heard part of my story, I want to ask you, what do you think? Honestly, was I wrong for walking away? Should I have handled things differently? I'm really curious to know. So drop your thoughts in the comments below. And one more thing, if this story hit you in any way, or if you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video with them. Maybe they're going through something similar, or maybe they just need to see that it's okay to stand up for yourself when things aren't right. Either way, thanks for sticking with me and listening to my side of things. I can't wait to see what you all have to say.